And speaking of the world being dangerous, David Knight was on the Alex Jones radio show today where they discussed traffic stops in which two women, and I'm sure there are many more than them, but most recently, two women were pulled over, cavity searched on the side of the road. People driving by can see all what's going on. And it's getting to the point where seems like you have more to fear from the people who are supposed to protect you than the actual, quote, criminals out there, because you have cops violating your orifices on the side of the roads and TSA grabbing on your chest and your junk down there. So it's getting kind of scary out there. But anyway, here's David Knight's interview with Alex Jones earlier today.
The government ships in the majority of the drugs. The big banks launder it publicly. Then they hope your kids end up using them so they can put you in a private prison. Now, David Knight has gone over this, read over this, and we're also going to go over the Fourth Amendment here for people. But what do you think of the Texas Rangers? You have their quotes there, because they're supposedly oversee the state police. They're like, you know, Batman, the state police, or Robin. You know, they're the state investigative force over law enforcement. What do you make of their statement that we think this is reasonable, and as long as we say it's reasonable, it means it's reasonable, when the real definition of a reasonable search is something entirely different?
Well, their spokesperson is trying to walk that back a little bit. Now, this happened all the way back in July. Here we are 5 months later, and this is coming to light, as you said, because of discovery in the lawsuit. But the spokesperson, Catherine Sessinger, said all troopers are obligated to act reasonably so as to comply with the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution as well as the Texas Constitution. Now, who could think that that was reasonable under any circumstances? And the problem is that the Constitution gives us a very objective standard for what is reasonable. And what the Supreme Court has done is to give us a subjective standard, right? The Constitution said that you will be protected against unreasonable searches in your person, especially, first thing that they mentioned, because this had happened to them with British soldiers. You know, Piers Morgan's ancestors had been doing this to people, right? So they'd moved into their houses. We got a constitutional amendment saying, you know, troops can't move into your houses.
Or have a standing army domestically.
Right. So they had seen the same types of things that we're seeing now. And that's why these things are in the Constitution.
They violated women.
Right, right. So they gave us an objective standard. They said it'll not be, you know, a reasonable search is one where you are specific about what you're looking for. You think you're going to find a crime, and you go before a judge, make a case, and a judge agrees, and then you're allowed to do it.
They should have hauled her into jail if they thought they had proof, gone before the judge, and then if they weren't right, they'd have been liable.
That's right. But what happened is that our Supreme Court thinks that they can amend the Constitution. They act as if they can, and they've given us two standards. They say a reasonable search is one where did the person actually expect some degree of privacy? Well, I think the woman would expect some degree of privacy. She said, basically, they said, well, we're going to search you. She had no idea it was going to be a search like that. But then they also say, is a person's expectation objectively reasonable? In other words, one that society is willing to recognize. Now, when you do that, what you've created is a sliding scale that is based on society's moral compass, which we see is being changed all the time by the media, by the movies that we watch, and by, you know, just what's happening in society. So now you've divorced everything from, you know, this standard where I think a crime is being committed, they make the case before a judge, and judge says that's okay. Now it's just about, well, what will society accept? And we can accept this.
And this is really unlimited what they're pushing. I got pulled over by state police about 5 years ago on 37 going down to the beach with my children. This is when my wife was pregnant with our third child. We only had 2 children then. The children were asleep. It was about 8 o'clock at night. And the state police came over and were looking at us like we were murderers. And they were wanting to get in to our children's car seats. And I said, listen here. I said, you're acting like wolves. I said, I don't like how you're looking at me. You know I don't have any warrants out. You know, they pulled me over 6 miles over the speed limit. And I said, listen, you got green, stinking teeth. And I said, I promise you this. I am going to sue you, and I will make your life a living hell. You give me the ticket, and you get off my back right now, and you get that witch away from me. Because I know criminals when I see them. Mm-hmm. And these people were like scum. It was a man and woman, 2 of them. And I mean, because usually state police pull you over. They're nice, you know, Dudley Do-Right, just out revenue generating. Most state police have actually been nice in my experience. But when these people came up, I looked in their eyes, and I mean, they were evil. And, you know, the problem is you've got predators that want these jobs, that crave power, and who aren't normal people. And look at TSA, how many of them are pedophiles and abusers and all of this. I mean, it's every day they're getting arrested for pedophilia or raping women in parking lots or, robbing people. And one TSA whistleblower said, oh, the average person steals like hundreds of thousands a year. And everybody I know has been robbed by the TSA. I've been robbed of a Tiffany baby rattle. And Dr. Pachenik's had his sleeping pills robbed. I mean, they rob. Everyone I know has been robbed by the TSA.
My brother-in-law had his video camera stolen out of his bag.
Yeah, so I mean, this is just a criminal force that is coming up against us, and they're protecting the criminals and promoting them. As you said, first they said this was reasonable. That's why they're having to sue. Now they're walking it back because of the outrage. But I got to be honest, man. I am actually now scared, and not scared in the way of I'm scared of the police. I'm scared of myself because this enters a whole nother dimension with daughters and people. I mean, I don't know about living in this country with my children, but there's nowhere to run is the problem when they're going to grow up and be raped by police.
Right. My son, we went to see Red Dawn. And, of course, the hallmark of tyranny imposed on the people is the roadside block where they inspect everybody. But they weren't going in people's pants. They weren't doing the TSA type of stuff. And my son said, the North Koreans treat them better than our TSA treats people. It's hard to get scared in a movie when, they can't recreate the same kind of tyranny that we see in real life.
And see, exactly. But in North Korea, they don't have to go in your pants because if they want to just disappear you, it happens. The problem here is, as I've said, it's a paradox. The old republic's still there to extent, shot up, rotting, falling apart, but it's quite a wreckage. It's like a mountain range, okay? And we breathe life into it. And the Phoenix is kind of getting up. It's starting to flame on if we just get it going. See, people die. Republics can be reborn. But we have to admit it's pretty much dead and resuscitate it with the shock paddles. But if we won't admit it's dead and get the shock paddles out, I mean, we're flatlining right now. On every level, we've gone into the flat line. And if we don't admit that and ask for God to strike us with that lightning of liberty to wake us up, we're dead. Yeah. And then it is evacuation time or revolution time. And more people are talking like that, prominent people, who know history. This isn't a game. But just to look at how they've hired police that will follow any order, who have low IQs, who will do things like this, it is so frightening. But there's a total tyranny. If you look at the parallel tyranny, it's the worst the world's ever seen. The worst spying, the worst control, the worst weaponization. Hitler tortured people, but they didn't admit it. They come out and go, yeah, we sexually torture people. We torture their kids. And the media is like, well, that's how you get tough. I mean, it's if they're able to fully capsize liberty and then flip in this pure evil, it's going to be something like the world's never seen. So what's your take on my statement of these two rails, this paradox?
Yeah, well, I talked to David Simpson here. He's a state representative who's introduced a bill to rein in the TSA.
He introduced the one last time.
Right. And he's focusing on these sexual assault issues, especially now this one has also added another clause that protects children from being separated from their parents because of what happened to an autistic boy. But, while the TSA is doing this, and actually, whether it's by training or by imitation or by design, now the state Highway Patrol is doing this to people. I mean, we need to have it's not just enough to protect us from the TSA. This is getting pervasive throughout all law enforcement. And if we don't stop it with the TSA, if we don't stop it with local law enforcement, it is going to be pervasive with everybody. I mean, it's just, it's just amazing to me that people would stand for this. People are going to have to stand up. They're going to have to take their rights back, first as jurors. And we're also going to have to put a lot of pressure on some state representatives because they're not as corrupt as the federal representatives. And we got some good people in the state.
Well, they unanimously, after Simpson brought it forward, passed it in the House. The Senate had all the votes. But David Dewhurst came out and killed it.
Yeah.
And the feds said, we will have an armed blockade with F-16s. And it was reported by the Dallas Morning News like, well, the feds threatened blockade with the Air Force. Not a embargo. I say call that bluff.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, why did the House do this? They're all flying. And I had a whole bunch of state reps and senators on where they would describe their wives, their daughters. Well, one state rep had his daughter disrobed. They've had cases in Texas where the TSA then asked the women for dates. These are such pervs that they've settled. Where on video, they pull the woman's bra off and are going, "You are hot," and 3 men get around her and ask her for dates. I mean, this is how stupid they are, too. I mean, you got to be really dumb to be around body scanners all day that are admittedly giving them cancers.
That's right.
These are guys that are willing to die.
Yeah.
Willing to die to be able to grope people. So they are, well, this is what every tyranny's done. It creates a subgroup of goons that are outside law that are just federally licensed, and then the other police convert to them as the standard. I mean, how many times have I talked about, listen, the TSA is now certifying, they're the, quote, inspectors over the police at these highway checkpoints.
Absolutely.
Because their standards are now what's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Whether it's by fiat or whether they're just training the people. Well, hopefully something's going to change with it, because David Simpson is really committed to this, and there are a few people with backbone that are going to fight this. Talked to a representative in Michigan who just came up with an anti-NDAA bill that passed unanimously in the Michigan House there. So at the state level, there are some good, honest men with backbone and women, and hopefully we'll have enough of them. But, you know, what he said, the guy in Michigan said, he couldn't propose an NDAA bill that was actually going to prohibit and interpose against the feds. What he was going to do was keep the state from assisting them, as we're talking about, you know.
Yeah, and they've done that in 800 cities for illegal aliens illegally. But the states could ignore the tyranny legally on the constitutional grounds. Because the feds are only supposed to protect the borders, coin the money, and have a navy. They do everything they're not supposed to do, though. Right. You know, my issue is, what do you think you do if you're there with your wife and your children and they get you out on the side of the highway and it's not enough to search your vehicle and they go, okay, I'm going to stick my hands down your pants now, or they don't even tell you. I mean, they'll kill you is the thing. Right. I mean, I guess you let them rape you or they'll kill you.
That's right. Well, part of it is, you know, one of the other things that's disturbing is how they're using these tasers as electronic whips to get everybody into submission. And that's what would wind up, they would wind up tasering you.
Well, no, they admit that. Yeah. And if you resist that, they kill you. Yeah. They say, no, it's pain compliance.
Yeah.
Torture's here in America.
Absolutely.
Man, I tell you, people think being subservient will make things go easier on them. That's not the American spirit. We have lost the American spirit. Can you imagine if the founders were told, because not even the redcoats did, I mean, they had redcoats that did abuse some women, and they would always end up dead. I mean, can you imagine the founders, if they had a crystal ball or looking down from heaven, if they could see women with people shoving, I mean, you see that woman at one point just right into her body. I mean, this is off the charts. I mean, there's no way I would involuntarily strike back. And that's terrorism now.
Right. And that's what's surprising about it, is that behavior is like the response we get from the Highway Patrol is, well, we're going to have to look at this to see if it was reasonable under the circumstances. We're going to have to look at this to see, and the Supreme Court says, does society think that that's reasonable? Well, they're conditioning us to think that anything is reasonable.
For more than 6 years, I've talked on the air about creating a social network. PlanetInfoWars.com is in its beta phase. We're just launching it. And I want to invite all of you out there to be in on the ground level. Planet InfoWars is about people coming together, forming activist organizations, getting involved politically, hunting and fishing, gardening, dating. This is a place for people who love freedom to meet and to talk and to write and to post information. And I give you this pledge. We are not going to spy on you and sell your data to the New World Order. PlanetInfoWars.com is free, so people who love freedom can get together, connect with people who are awake and know what we're facing. Be active, organize, take action, go viral, create, contribute, resist, because resistance is victory. You are victory. It's waiting for you to breathe power into it. PlanetInfoWars.com.